My boyfriend's brother demanded we break up because his new GF felt threatened by me. Turns out, he was really mad my BF secretly bought me an engagement ring. It feels like a whole lifetime ago, but my boyfriend, Nate, and I started dating when we were just 17. We're both 21 now, and honestly, our relationship has always felt incredibly stable and just right. It's not just him, though. His family has become my second family over these past 4 years. I genuinely can't imagine a major holiday, Easter brunch, Thanksgiving feasts overflowing with food, cozy Christmas mornings, without being right there with them. Nate's mom, Susan, is amazing. We clicked almost instantly. We share a love for terrible reality TV and complicated baking projects that sometimes end in disaster but always in laughter. Nate often groans good-naturedly that she probably calls me more than she calls him, and honestly, he might be right. We just get along that well. His dad, Robert, is like the father figure I always wished I had more of growing up. He's the steady, kind presence, always ready with advice or just a listening ear. He's told me more than once, especially after a glass or two of wine at family dinners, that he sees me less as Nate's girlfriend and more like another daughter. Hearing that always makes my heart feel full. We have these little routines, like analyzing the weekend's football games or him quizzing me, gently, about my studies. Nate has an older brother, Mark, who's 24. He's perfectly nice, and we get along okay, but he's always been much quieter and more reserved than the rest of the family. He keeps to himself more, happy to hang back while Nate, his parents, and I are chatting away. So, while I like him, I don't know him nearly as well as I know Susan, Robert, and Nate. It was actually a bit of a surprise to everyone when Mark recently started dating someone. As far as I knew, this was the first serious relationship he'd been in since we all met back in high school. Naturally, everyone was curious and hopeful for him. This past weekend was a particularly special one. It was Susan and Robert's wedding anniversary. They always like to mark it with a nice family dinner, and I was, of course, invited as usual. This year felt a bit different, though, because they'd also asked Mark to bring his new girlfriend, Jessica, so everyone could finally meet her. She's our age, 21, and I was genuinely looking forward to it. I thought maybe Mark had found someone great, and perhaps I'd even make a new friend. I headed over to Nate's parents' place early on Saturday afternoon. Susan and I had grand plans to tackle an ambitious coq au vin recipe for the anniversary dinner, something we'd been talking about trying for weeks. The afternoon was lovely and relaxed, just me, Nate, Susan, and Robert. We chopped vegetables, stirred sauces, listened to music, and just enjoyed the comfortable familiarity. Nate helped his dad with some minor fix-it task in the garage, and Susan and I gossiped while the chicken simmered. It felt like any other wonderful weekend gathering. Mark and Jessica arrived later in the evening, just as we were putting the finishing touches on the meal prep. The shift in atmosphere was almost immediate. Jessica walked in, and right away, she seemed determined to make a big impression, though maybe not the kind she intended. She scanned the room, zeroed in on Nate and Robert who were chatting near the fireplace, and walked straight up to them. She declared, rather loudly, that she hadn't realized all the men in the family were so handsome. Then, she gave both Nate and Robert these hugs that seemed to go on just a bit too long, pressing herself against them in a way that felt overly familiar for a first meeting. Nate visibly tensed up, and Robert had this slightly awkward, polite smile plastered on his face. After detaching herself from the men, she finally turned towards Susan, who was standing near me by the kitchen island. Jessica completely bypassed me, didn't even glance my way, and gushed to Susan about how pretty she was. Then, with a playful wink that didn't feel playful at all, she added a comment about Susan needing to watch out because her husband was now on Jessica's radar. It was meant as a joke, I guess, but it landed with a thud. The moment Jessica turned away to look around the living room again, Susan leaned towards me, her eyes wide, and whispered that she had a really bad feeling about this one. My own stomach felt uneasy, the vibe was just off. Susan and I tried to stay busy in the kitchen, plating appetizers and getting things organized, but our kitchen has an open layout, looking directly into the living room, so we couldn't help but see what was happening. Jessica seemed determined to be the center of attention. At one point, wanting to show Robert something on her phone, she didn't just lean over, she perched right on his lap on the armchair. He looked distinctly uncomfortable, trying to lean away subtly. A few minutes later, she did the same thing with Nate on the sofa while asking him about his college major. He practically jumped up, making an excuse about needing to check on the drinks. Both men looked increasingly awkward, clearly not enjoying the overly flirtatious physical contact. It wasn't long before Nate retreated to the kitchen, joining Susan and me. He leaned against the counter, sighing, and muttered under his breath that he really didn't like her. Trying to maybe smooth things over or just include her normally, I decided to call Jessica over to taste the pasta sauce we were making for a side dish. We all generally enjoy spicy food in Nate's family, but I wasn't sure about her tolerance. I offered her a spoonful. She took a bite, paused, and then said it was good. Then she added, looking me up and down almost appraisingly, that she could see why they kept bringing me around. It was phrased like a compliment, but the tone felt backhanded, almost like my only value was my cooking. It just solidified the weird feeling I had about her. Susan caught my eye again and gave a slight shake of her head. Soon enough, it was time for dinner. We moved to the dining room, the table set nicely with the good china for the anniversary. Nate's family has a tradition of saying grace before special meals. Usually, Robert or Susan leads, but tonight, wanting to be welcoming, Susan invited Jessica to do the honors as their guest. Jessica accepted eagerly. She bowed her head and launched into a lengthy thank you to God, mentioning the delicious food, the lovely home, and thanking him for Susan, Robert, Mark, and Nate by name. She pointedly, unmistakably, left me out. It wasn't a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, I suppose. I wasn't deeply religious myself, but it felt deliberate, an exclusion meant to be noticed. I didn't react outwardly, just kept my head bowed, but I could feel Nate shift beside me, and when I glanced up, both he and Susan shot me identical. Did you just hear that? Looks across the table. Dinner itself became a strange performance. Robert, in his usual way with new people, started asking Jessica questions, trying to get to know her, about her family, her studies, her job, her interests. It was the same gentle, welcoming interrogation he'd given me years ago. From her answers, she sounded like she came from a perfectly normal background, maybe a bit restless in her current retail job but otherwise unremarkable. She seemed nice enough on the surface when directly answering his questions. After a while, Robert seemed satisfied and turned his attention to me, asking about the volunteer project I'd recently started at the local animal shelter and my preliminary research into graduate school programs. I was excited to share some updates, especially about a particular dog I'd been working with, but before I could get more than a sentence out, Jessica jumped in. She interrupted me mid-thought, launching into a long complaint about how much she hated her job, how unfair her boss was, and how she deserved something better. Robert listened politely for a moment, but his responses became noticeably drier, just short nods and ahas. It was clear his interest had waned. He then deliberately turned back to me, pointedly ignoring Jessica's ongoing monologue, and asked specifically about how my parents were doing and if my sister had enjoyed her recent trip. This pattern repeated itself throughout the entire meal. Every time someone, Susan, Robert, or even Nate, directed a question or comment my way, acknowledging my presence or asking for my opinion, Jessica would somehow steer the conversation back to herself. If I mentioned a class I was enjoying, she'd talk about a class she found boring. If Susan complimented the earrings I was wearing, Jessica would immediately talk about jewelry she wanted to buy. It was relentless and exhausting. Nate started looking increasingly irritated, clenching his jaw, while Susan just seemed weary. Robert maintained his politeness, but his focus kept drifting. Towards the end of the meal, as coffee was being served, Jessica decided to make another one of her jokes. She looked at Mark, then playfully nudged Nate, who was sitting next to her, and said something along the lines of Mark needing to be careful, because she might just decide to leave him for Nate. It was awkward and inappropriate, especially given her earlier behavior. By this point, I was mostly just tired of her antics and didn't feel jealous, just vaguely annoyed. Wanting to shut it down with humor rather than confrontation, I played along lightly. I smiled and said something like, "Yeah, Nate, just make sure you remember to invite me to the wedding when it happens." I meant it sarcastically, a way to diffuse the weirdness. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say. It was like a switch flipped. Jessica's playful demeanor vanished, and her eyes filled with tears. She suddenly started crying, accusing me of trying to embarrass her all night long. She claimed I was deliberately making her look bad in front of Nate's family, that I was acting like I owned the place and hogging everyone's attention. It escalated quickly into a rambling, tearful tirade about how threatened she felt by my relationship with the family and how I was making it impossible for her to fit in. The rest of us just sat there, stunned into silence. Mark looked mortified, trying to quiet her down. The atmosphere was completely ruined. Almost immediately after her outburst, Jessica stood up, grabbed a visibly distressed Mark by the arm, and practically dragged him out of the dining room and towards the front door. They had originally planned to stay the night, as Susan and Robert had invited them to make a weekend of it, but they were out of the house within minutes, leaving a trail of bewildered silence behind them. Once the door closed, there was this collective exhale around the table. Susan immediately reached across and squeezed my hand, apologizing profusely for Jessica's behavior. Robert echoed her sentiments, saying he was sorry I had to endure that during their anniversary dinner. Nate wrapped an arm around me, looking furious on my behalf. We all agreed Jessica's behavior was completely out of line. We tried to salvage the rest of the evening, having some coffee and later some wine, talking about anything but Jessica and Mark for a while, but the celebratory mood had definitely dampened. We ended up watching a movie, trying to relax, but the tension lingered. The next morning felt heavy. We were having a late, quiet breakfast when Susan's phone rang. It was Mark. She answered, and his voice was immediately audible, tight with anger. Sensing this was important, Susan put the phone on speaker so we could all hear. Mark sounded incredibly pissed off. He launched straight into how upset Jessica was, blaming both me and his family for the disastrous evening. He said Jessica was devastated, feeling attacked and unwelcome, and was now having serious doubts about their relationship and about him. According to Mark, Jessica felt that as long as I was so deeply integrated into the family, she couldn't see a future for them together. Then came the truly unbelievable part. Mark, sounding completely serious, stated that the only way to fix this, the only way for Jessica to feel secure and stop crying, was if Nate and I broke up. He actually asked Nate, right there on speakerphone, to end our 4-year relationship to appease his girlfriend of a few months. Nate immediately shut that down, telling Mark absolutely not, that it was an insane request. Susan and Robert chimed in, telling Mark his demand was unfair and unacceptable. Mark's response was chilling. He told them, his voice cold, that it was either me out of the family picture, or he was. He stated he didn't want to lose Jessica over someone who wasn't even real family, someone not related by blood. Then he hung up. We were all just stunned. Susan looked like she was about to cry. Robert was pale and quiet. Nate was furious and hurt. Since that phone call, Mark hasn't answered any calls or texts from his parents or Nate. The silence is deafening and incredibly stressful for everyone. Susan is worried sick about him, Robert feels caught in the middle, and Nate is oscillating between anger at his brother and guilt that this somehow involves me. I feel this horrible mix of guilt, confusion, and hurt. I know rationally I didn't do anything wrong, but I hate being the catalyst for such a massive family rift. I love Nate, and I adore his parents, they feel like my own. The thought of being the reason this family breaks apart is unbearable. But the idea of breaking up with Nate to satisfy the demands of his brother and his incredibly insecure girlfriend is unthinkable. I'm just completely lost, unsure how to navigate this mess or even how to process the sheer absurdity of it all. Update first off, thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts. Reading the responses really helped me feel less like I was going crazy or being selfish for wanting to stay in my relationship and remain close to Nate's family. It solidified my resolve not to let Mark or Jessica dictate our lives or manipulate the situation. Nate and I are sticking together, and his parents are fully supportive of us. There's been a bit of a development that sheds some more light on maybe why Mark reacted so extremely, although it doesn't excuse his or Jessica's behavior. This morning, after another day of stressful silence, Susan finally managed to get Mark on the phone. He agreed to come over and talk, thankfully without Jessica this time. Nate and I went over too, bracing ourselves for another difficult conversation. Mark seemed calmer initially when he arrived. He actually started by apologizing for the way things went down at the anniversary dinner and for his outburst on the phone. It felt like a step in the right direction. However, that feeling didn't last long. While he apologized for his delivery, he made it clear he was still completely backing Jessica. He reiterated his belief that my presence in the family dynamic was the core problem for his relationship. He, again, suggested that the best thing for his relationship would be for Nate and me to break up. This, understandably, set Nate off. There was a lot of heated back and forth between the brothers. Nate was trying to make Mark see how irrational and unfair he was being, how Jessica's insecurities shouldn't destroy long-standing family relationships. Mark kept insisting that Jessica felt threatened and that Nate and his parents weren't understanding her perspective or prioritizing Mark's happiness. He accused Nate of always getting things easy, of having the perfect relationship in the family's favor, while he struggled. I mostly stayed quiet during this exchange. It felt like something they needed to hash out, however painfully. Susan and Robert tried to mediate, but both brothers were too entrenched in their positions. Eventually, Mark got angry all over again, his voice rising. He stood up abruptly, ready to leave. As he was heading towards the door, he turned back, looked directly at Nate, and spat out something truly venomous. He told Nate he could shove that ring he bought up his rear end, and that Nate shouldn't even think about inviting him to the wedding. Then he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The room felt thick with tension and confusion after he left. A ring? A wedding? Nate looked incredibly uncomfortable and pained. After a few moments of heavy silence, Nate took a deep breath and decided to explain. He turned to me, his expression a mixture of regret and nervousness, and told me something he had been keeping secret. Apparently, he had bought an engagement ring for me several months ago. His plan wasn't to propose immediately, but sometime in the near future when the moment felt right. He had excitedly shared this news with his parents and, crucially, with Mark a while back. Nate said that almost immediately after he told Mark about the ring and his intention to propose, the dynamic between them shifted. Mark became more distant, subtly more critical, and there was an undercurrent of tension that Nate hadn't fully understood until now. Hearing Mark's parting shot about the ring and the wedding made it click for Nate, and for me. So, while Jessica's behavior was undeniably awful and likely fueled by her own insecurities, it seems like a significant part of Mark's intense reaction and his willingness to back her unreasonable demands stems from his own feelings about Nate planning to marry me. Maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's feeling left behind, maybe it's resentment that his younger brother is hitting major life milestones first. I'm still bewildered by Jessica's actions, the flirting, the interruptions, the sudden meltdown, but understanding this underlying resentment from Mark makes his ultimatum, while still unacceptable, slightly less baffling. It wasn't just about Jessica's feelings, it was tangled up with his own issues regarding Nate and me getting serious. Learning about the proposal plan was definitely a shock. Part of me felt a surge of happiness knowing Nate wants to marry me, but another part felt strange realizing this huge family drama was partly orbiting around a ring I didn't even know existed. It's a weird mix of emotions. Someone asked about Mark's dating history, and Susan confirmed later that this relationship with Jessica is genuinely the first serious one he's had since a brief high school thing when he was about 16. He's 24 now, so maybe seeing Nate so settled and planning a future triggered something in him, making him cling fiercely to his own new relationship, however flawed it might be. Anyway, that's the latest. Nate felt bad that the surprise was partially spoiled, but we talked it through properly later. He reassured me he still plans to propose officially, with a ring, when he originally intended to. We're solid, and I'm definitely staying with him. I'm also going to continue being part of Susan and Robert's lives, just as before. However, I think it's wise for Nate and me to keep our distance from Mark and, by extension, Jessica for the foreseeable future. Things are way too raw right now, and honestly, I don't trust that further interactions wouldn't lead to more drama. Hopefully, Mark will eventually come around, but until then, protecting our peace and our relationship has to be the priority. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My parents wanted to give my share of inheritance to their favored daughter, but little did they know that my grandparents had other plans. I, 28M, come from a family with a long and complicated history of favoritism. My parents, especially my dad, have always favored my younger sister Amy, 25F, over me. This favoritism started when we were kids and only got worse as we grew up. From my earliest memories, Amy was always the golden child. When I was 5 and she was 2, our parents threw her an extravagant birthday party with a bouncy castle, petting zoo, and professional face painters. For my birthday that same year, I got a small family dinner and a store-bought cake. This set the tone for years to come. As we grew older, the disparities became more apparent. Amy always got the newest toys, the best clothes, and the most attention. I remember when I was 10, I saved up my allowance for months to buy a new bike. When Amy saw it, she threw a tantrum because she wanted one too. Instead of teaching her about saving or waiting, my parents immediately went out and bought her an even better bike than mine. School was another arena where the favoritism shone through. My parents went to all of Amy's school events but often missed mine. In 4th grade, I had the lead role in the school play. I was so excited and practiced for weeks. On the night of the performance, my parents showed up an hour late, missing my big scene. They said Amy had a tummy ache and they were comforting her. I later found out she was fine. They had just lost track of time while playing with her. When it came to academics, nothing I did ever seemed good enough. In middle school, I consistently got straight A's, joined the math club, and even won a regional science fair. My parents barely acknowledged these achievements. But when Amy got a B+ on a single test in her weakest subject, they threw her a celebratory dinner and bought her a new phone as motivation to keep improving. High school was particularly tough. I threw myself into every activity I could, hoping to win their approval. I was captain of the debate team, editor of the school newspaper, and maintained a 4.0 GPA. Meanwhile, Amy coasted through school, barely maintaining a C average and spending most of her time partying with friends. During my junior year, I was selected as one of 2 students from our school to attend a prestigious summer program at Harvard. It was a huge honor, and I was thrilled. When I shared the news at dinner, my dad grunted and changed the subject to Amy's upcoming dance recital. My mom at least said that's nice, but quickly moved on. The night of Amy's recital, which fell on the same day I was leaving for Harvard, my parents couldn't drive me to the airport because they didn't want to miss Amy's performance. I had to ask a friend's parents for a ride. The college application process was another painful experience. I spent months perfecting my essays, participating in extracurriculars, and studying for the SATs. I was accepted into several top-tier universities and received a substantial scholarship to my dream school. When I announced this at dinner, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. My dad said, "That's good, but don't let it go to your head. College isn't everything." My mom added, "Just don't forget about us when you're off becoming a big shot." In contrast, when Amy barely graduated high school and decided not to go to college, my parents were completely supportive. They praised her for knowing herself and not conforming to societal pressures. They even bought her a car as a graduation present, something they never did for me. This constant favoritism took a heavy toll on me emotionally. I struggled with depression and anxiety throughout my teens and early 20s. I started seeing a therapist in college, which helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't my fault. It took years of work to build my self-esteem and learn to validate myself instead of seeking approval from my parents. Despite the lack of support from my immediate family, I managed to build a good life for myself. I graduated college with honors, secured a good job in finance, and even bought my own house by 27. I'm proud of what I've achieved, even if my parents aren't. Now, here's where the current drama starts. My grandfather on my dad's side passed away recently. He was a successful businessman who built a fortune from scratch, and he left behind a significant estate. In his will, he divided his assets equally among his children, my dad and his siblings, and grandchildren, me, Amy, and our cousins. My share of the inheritance was substantial, about $500,000. It would have allowed me to pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and maybe even start my own business someday. I was grateful for this unexpected windfall and the opportunities it could provide. However, when the will was read, my parents were visibly upset. They pulled me aside afterward and told me they thought it was unfair that I got an equal share. They said Amy needed the money more because she was struggling. She works part-time at a coffee shop and lives in our parents' basement. I was shocked but tried to stay calm. I explained that this was Grandpa's decision, and it wasn't up to them to change it. They insisted that I should do the right thing and give my share to Amy. When I refused, they got angry and started guilt-tripping me, saying I was selfish and ungrateful. My dad brought up every instance he could think of where they had supported me. He mentioned paying for my braces, which were medically necessary, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and letting me live at home during college, even though I worked part-time to contribute to expenses. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the countless shopping sprees, and the fact that they're still supporting her at 25. The situation escalated quickly. My dad, as the executor of the will, decided to take matters into his own hands. He announced that he was going to reinterpret Grandpa's wishes and give my entire share to Amy, on top of her own inheritance. He claimed this is what Grandpa would have wanted if he had known our individual circumstances. I was devastated. Not only was this clearly illegal, but it was also a painful reminder of how little my parents valued me. I tried to reason with them, pointing out that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was well aware of our situations. My mom then accused me of speaking ill of the dead by suggesting Grandpa would have wanted anything different from what my dad was proposing. I brought up specific memories of Grandpa encouraging my academic and career pursuits, but my parents dismissed these as misunderstandings. They claimed Grandpa had privately expressed concern about Amy's future and had wanted to ensure she was taken care of. When I asked why he hadn't just written the will that way then, they didn't have an answer. Amy, for her part, seemed uncomfortable with the situation but didn't speak up against our parents. When I tried to talk to her privately, she just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." It was clear she wasn't going to be any help. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I reached out to my paternal grandma, Grandpa's widow, for advice. She was furious when she heard what was happening. She told me that this was absolutely not what Grandpa had intended and that my parents had no right to change the will. Grandma shared some information that shed new light on the situation. Apparently, my parents had approached Grandpa a few years ago, asking him to leave everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had firmly refused, stating that he believed in treating all his grandchildren equally. He had even added a clause to his will stating that anyone who contested the equal distribution would forfeit their share. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. They were shocked that Grandma had told me about their previous attempt to influence the will. My dad tried to justify it by saying they were just looking out for Amy's future, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandma took action immediately. She contacted her lawyer and the other executors of the will. She also reached out to my dad's siblings, who were equally outraged by what my dad was trying to do. Together, they put a stop to my dad's plan and ensured that the will would be executed as written. My parents were forced to back down, but they're furious with me. They accused me of turning the family against them and said I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others. My mom cried about how I had betrayed them and broken the family apart. My dad threatened to cut me out of their will entirely, to which I responded that I had never expected anything from them anyway. They're now threatening to cut me off completely if I accept their money, as they see it. My dad even went so far as to say that if I take the inheritance, I'm no longer welcome in their home. My mom, in a particularly low blow, said that my acceptance of the money shows that I never really loved them and was just waiting to cash in on their deaths. The extended family is divided on the issue. Some of my cousins are supportive, recognizing the long-standing favoritism and praising me for standing up for myself. Others think I should have just given in to keep the peace, saying that family harmony is more important than money. My dad's siblings are firmly on my side, but this has caused tension between them and my parents. Amy is caught in the middle of all this. She told me privately that she didn't ask for this and feels guilty, but she's not willing to stand up to our parents. I don't blame her entirely. She's been conditioned her whole life to rely on them and seek their approval. Still, a part of me wishes she would support me just this once. This situation has brought up a lot of old pain and resentment. I find myself thinking back to all the times I was overlooked or dismissed in favor of Amy. The birthday parties I didn't have, the school events my parents missed, the achievements that went unrecognized. It's like a lifetime of unfairness is coming to a head in this one event. I'm standing my ground and plan to accept my inheritance as Grandpa intended. But the whole situation has created a huge rift in the family. My parents are barely speaking to me, and family gatherings have become tense and uncomfortable. Last week, I skipped our monthly family dinner for the first time ever because I couldn't face the cold shoulders and accusatory glares. Despite the drama, a small part of me feels empowered. For the first time in my life, I'm standing up to my parents' unfair treatment. I'm asserting my worth and refusing to be sidelined. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. I believe I'm in the right here, but the family drama is taking a toll on me. I've started having anxiety attacks again, something I haven't experienced since college. I'm considering going back to therapy to help deal with all this stress. Am I the asshole for accepting my inheritance and not giving in to my parents' demands? Should I have just given Amy the money to keep the peace? I'm tired of being the family scapegoat, but I'm also scared of losing my family entirely. Any advice or perspective would be appreciated. Update: it's been about 6 months since my original post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me stay strong during a difficult time. First, let me address the legal side of things. As many of you suggested, I did consult with a lawyer of my own. He confirmed that what my dad tried to do was indeed illegal and that I had every right to my inheritance. He helped me document everything and prepared to take legal action if necessary. Thankfully, it didn't come to that. My grandma and her lawyer, along with my dad's siblings, managed to sort things out without going to court. The will was executed as written, and I received my full inheritance. My dad was removed as an executor due to his attempt to manipulate the will. This process took several weeks and was incredibly stressful. There were tense meetings, heated phone calls, and even a few threats of lawsuits from my parents. But in the end, the law was clear, and they had to back down. The family fallout, however, has been significant and is still ongoing. My parents initially doubled down on their position. They accused me of being greedy and uncaring towards my sister. They even tried to rally other family members against me, spreading rumors that I had somehow tricked or manipulated Grandpa into leaving me money. Fortunately, most of the family saw through their manipulation. There was one particularly ugly incident at a family gathering about a month after the will was settled. My parents showed up uninvited. My aunt was hosting and hadn't asked them to come, and caused a scene. My dad started yelling about how I had stolen from Amy and corrupted Grandma against them. My mom dramatically threw an old photo album at my feet, saying I had destroyed all these happy memories. It was embarrassing and painful, and it took several relatives to calm the situation and ask my parents to leave. My grandma, bless her heart, became my strongest advocate through all of this. She shared stories about how my grandfather had always been proud of my accomplishments and how he specifically wanted to ensure all his grandchildren had equal opportunities. She even revealed that Grandpa had kept a scrapbook of my achievements, newspaper clippings of academic awards, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from that school play my parents had been late to. This revelation was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Grandma also took it upon herself to set the record straight with the extended family. She called a family meeting, excluding my parents, where she laid out the whole history of my parents' favoritism, including incidents I had long forgotten or never even knew about. It was vindicating to have someone finally acknowledge the unfairness I had experienced for years, but it also opened old wounds. As for my sister Amy, she finally found her voice in all this. After some soul-searching and several long conversations with our grandma, she approached me privately and apologized for not standing up for me earlier. She admitted that she knew our parents' favoritism was wrong but had been too afraid to challenge it. We had a long, emotional talk about our childhood and how it affected both of us. Amy confessed that being the favorite child wasn't as great as it seemed. She felt immense pressure to live up to our parents' expectations and never learned how to stand on her own 2 feet. She shared stories of times she wanted to achieve things on her own, but our parents would swoop in and do everything for her, robbing her of the chance to grow and learn from her mistakes. This conversation was a turning point for our relationship. We started to rebuild the sibling bond that had been damaged by our parents' favoritism. We've been meeting regularly for coffee, just the two of us, to talk and support each other through this family upheaval. Amy surprised everyone by announcing that she was going to use her inheritance to go to college. She said watching me stand up for myself inspired her to take control of her own life. She enrolled in a local community college to start, with plans to transfer to a 4-year university once she figures out what she wants to study. Our parents were shocked. I think they realized their babying hadn't done Amy any favors. My parents' reaction to all this has been mixed and evolving. At first, they were furious with both of us. They accused me of turning Amy against them and tried to guilt her into giving up college to support the family. When that didn't work, they switched tactics. My mom, after several long conversations with my grandma and witnessing the positive changes in Amy, started to see how their behavior had been harmful. She's taken some tentative steps towards reconciliation, even going so far as to start therapy to work on her issues. She reached out to me to apologize, admitting that she had been unfair and asking for a chance to make things right. It's a slow process, and I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also maintaining firm boundaries. My dad, unfortunately, has been less willing to admit any wrongdoing. He's still angry and feels like he's the victim in all this. He's barely speaking to me and has been cold towards Amy since she decided to go to college. He's made a few attempts to manipulate us, promising to forgive us if we just admit we were wrong, or threatening to sell our childhood home if we don't come to our senses. We're both standing firm, but it's painful to watch him push away both his children like this. The extended family dynamics have shifted significantly. I've become closer to my grandma and my dad's siblings, who have been wonderfully supportive. My aunts and uncles have shared their own stories of dealing with my dad's difficult behavior over the years, which has helped me feel less alone in this struggle. I've also formed deeper connections with some of my cousins who stood by me. We've started a monthly cousin dinner where we can all catch up without the pressure of the older generation's drama. As for me, I've been using my inheritance wisely. I paid off my student loans, which has given me an incredible sense of financial freedom. I've set up a diverse investment portfolio with the help of a financial advisor. I've also set aside some money to potentially start my own business in the future. I'm exploring the idea of opening a community center that offers affordable mental health services and financial literacy classes. But the most meaningful use of the money, for me, has been funding therapy for myself and offering to do the same for Amy. We're both working on healing from our childhood experiences and learning to set healthy boundaries with our parents. It's a long process, but I already feel like I'm making progress in understanding and overcoming the effects of the long-term favoritism and emotional neglect. This whole ordeal has led to some unexpected positive changes in my life. I've learned a lot about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. It hasn't been easy, and there are still tough days, but I know I did the right thing. I'm proud of myself for not giving in to the pressure and guilt. One of the most surprising outcomes has been a shift in my career goals. Dealing with all this family drama and going through therapy has made me realize how passionate I am about helping others who have experienced similar family dynamics. I'm now considering going back to school to become a family therapist specializing in adult children of emotionally immature parents. I've also started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring kids from difficult family backgrounds. It's incredibly rewarding to be able to provide the kind of support and encouragement I wish I had had as a child. I'm even thinking about using some of my inheritance to set up a scholarship fund for kids from similar situations. My relationship with Amy has continued to improve. We've started a tradition of having a siblings day once a month where we do something fun together, just the two of us. Last month, we went hiking and had a picnic, and it was the most relaxed and connected we've felt since we were little kids. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship on our own terms, without our parents' influence. As for my parents, things are still complicated. My mom has been making efforts to repair our relationship. She's been attending therapy regularly and has even started to acknowledge some of the harm her favoritism caused. We've had a few one-on-one lunches where we've had some honest, albeit difficult, conversations about our past and how we can move forward. It's not perfect, but it's progress. My dad, however, remains resistant to change. He still maintains that he did nothing wrong and that Amy and I are being ungrateful. He's missed several family events because he refuses to be in the same room as me. It hurts, but I'm learning to accept that I can't control his reactions or force him to see things differently. Grandma has become a rock for both Amy and me. She's been sharing more stories about our grandfather and how proud he would be of us for standing up for ourselves. She's also been a great mediator in family conflicts, always advocating for fairness and understanding. The whole experience has taught me a lot about the true meaning of family. I've realized that sometimes the family you choose can be more supportive than the one you're born into. I've formed closer bonds with my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me, and I've even developed a close-knit group of friends who have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. I've also learned the importance of self-care and setting boundaries. I no longer feel guilty for prioritizing my own well-being, and I'm getting better at saying no to situations that are harmful to my mental health. I've even started exploring new hobbies and interests that I had always put off because I was so focused on trying to win my parents' approval. To those who are in similar situations, I want to say, don't let anyone make you feel guilty for receiving what's rightfully yours. It's okay to stand up for yourself, even if it causes conflict. Family dynamics can be complicated, but you deserve to be treated with respect and fairness. Remember, it's never too late to start healing and building the life you deserve. Seek therapy if you need it, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. Your worth isn't determined by how your family treats you, but by who you are as a person. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice and support. It meant more than you know during a really difficult time. While the journey hasn't been easy, I'm looking forward to the future with a sense of optimism and self-assurance I haven't felt in years. I'm excited to see where this new chapter of my life will lead, and I'm committed to breaking the cycle of favoritism and creating healthier relationships in my own future family.